Welcome to Cozy Crimes and Cocoa. I'm Alistair Gray. Pour yourself something fragrant, dim the lights, and let us slip back to 1927. Tell me in the comments where you're listening from tonight. London fog, New York subway, a caravan in the Sahara? Chapter 1. Introduction and Setup. The Violet Tea Room perched like a jewel box atop Harrods department store, Regent Street, London. It was not merely a room. It was an experience whispered about in the society columns of the Tatler and coveted by those who could afford the price of admission. 1 guinea per head, plus the unspoken currency of pedigree. To reach it, one took the private lift tucked behind the glove counter on the ground floor. The lift was a cage of wrought iron and violet velvet, its walls padded so thickly that the bustle of Oxford Circus faded to a muffled heartbeat. Amethyst sconces, genuine bohemian crystal, cast a twilight glow that turned every pearl, every monocle, every diamond eardrop into a tiny purple star. When the gates folded back with a sigh, the scent that greeted you was not tea, though tea would come, but violets, crushed, candied, distilled and woven into the very air by a hidden atomizer behind the samovar. Friday, the 13th of May, 1927, was a day of low cloud and threatened rain. At precisely 3:07 p.m., the lift ascended for the final time that afternoon. 6 passengers stepped onto the thick Aubusson carpet, their footsteps swallowed by centuries of Persian wool. First came Lady Honoria Vale, 63, widow of Sir Geoffrey Vale, the shipping magnate whose liners had once ruled the Atlantic. She wore mourning black, relieved only by a rope of pearls so luminous they seemed to float against her throat. Her cane, ebony silver ferrule, tapped a slow, imperial rhythm. Behind her walked Captain Rupert Rusty Vale, her nephew, late of His Majesty's Navy. 34, sunburnt from Ceylon to Gibraltar, he jingled with the loose change of a man who had gambled away 3 inheritances and was angling for a 4th. His blazer was naval blue, but the buttons were mismatched, one from the HMS Iron Duke, another from a Monte Carlo casino. Next, Miss Daphne Lovelace, 24, the silent film starlet whose face had launched 1,000 picture palaces. She wore a violet cloche hat pulled low, the exact shade of the room's velvet walls, and a dress of georgette that shimmered like petrol on water. Her lips were painted coral, her eyes outlined in kohl sharp enough to sign a contract. At her side glided Mr. Felix Arden, theatrical producer, 42, monocle flashing like a semaphore. His voice was oiled mahogany. When he greeted the lift attendant, the man blushed to the roots of his hair. Then Dr. Cornelius Shaw, Harley Street nerve specialist, 50, carrying a slim black case that never left his left hand. His suit was charcoal, his tie a discreet medico's purple. He nodded to no one, but his eyes, pale gray, unblinking, catalogued every detail. The tremor in Rusty's fingers, the pulse at Daphne's throat, the way Lady Honoria's pearls caught the light like tiny moons. Last of the invited pair, Madame Zara, spiritualist to the crowned heads of Europe, or so her carte de visite claimed. She swept in trailing patchouli and mystery, her turban pinned with a cabochon amethyst the size of a quail's egg. A veil of black lace obscured her face, but her voice, low, accented, impossible to place, promised secrets from beyond the veil. They had come for the reading of Sir Geoffrey Vale's revised will. Sir Geoffrey himself lay 3 floors below in the store's cold storage, having suffered what the death certificate termed a sudden cardiac infarction at 11:42 p.m. the previous night. The inquest was scheduled for Monday. Until then, his solicitor, Mr. Archibald Finch of Lincoln's Inn, had requested the presence of these 6 in the Violet Tea Room at 3:30 p.m. sharp. The doors to the tea room were locked at 3:15 p.m. by the store manager, Mr. Reginald Phipps. Phipps was a thin man of 55 with the posture of a man who had spent his life apologizing for the price of silk stockings. He turned the key, Chubb 5-lever, no duplicate issued since 1919, and slipped it into the inner pocket of his morning coat. "For your privacy, Lady Honoria," he murmured, bowing so low his nose nearly brushed the carpet. The room itself was an octagon 30 feet across with windows on 5 sides overlooking Regent Street 60 feet below. The glass was wartime issue, thick, slightly warped, painted shut since 1916 to prevent bomb blast. A single service door led to the dumbwaiter, a hatch 18 inches square bolted from the inside with a brass slide. The shaft dropped 4 stories to the pastry kitchen. No ladder, no foothold, no possibility of ascent or descent by any living soul larger than a well-fed cat. At the center of the room stood the famous samovar, Russian, silver-gilt, imported in 1905 by the Tsar's own silversmith. It hissed gently, a low dragon's breath atop a marquetry table inlaid with mother-of-pearl violets. Beside it 6 cups of the finest bone china, each painted with a single violet bloom. 6 plates. 6 slices of Black Forest gâteau, the cherries glistening like drops of blood under the chandeliers. A 7th cup, smaller, plainer, almost an afterthought, stood on a sideboard behind a potted aspidistra. No one noticed it. Yet. Lady Honoria took the chair at the head of the table, her cane propped like a scepter. Rusty lounged to her right, already eyeing the gâteau. Daphne and Felix took the window seats, their reflections doubled in the glass. Dr. Shaw placed his black case on the floor beside him, click, and folded his hands. Madame Zara drifted to the far corner, arranging her veils like a stage curtain. Mr. Finch arrived at 3:28 p.m., breathless, clutching a Morocco leather folder sealed with red wax. He bowed to Lady Honoria. "My lady, the document is unconventional. Sir Geoffrey insisted on certain theatrical elements." Lady Honoria's lips thinned. Geoffrey always did have a flair for the dramatic. Proceed. Finch broke the seal. The room fell silent save for the samovar's gentle hiss and the distant murmur of Regent Street traffic. At 3:30 p.m. precisely, the violet samovar exhaled a plume of steam that smelled faintly of almonds. 6 cups were filled, 6 spoons clinked. 1 pod of lapsang souchong, smoky, aristocratic, lethal, waited to be poured. Chapter 2. The Crime Discovered. The first sound was not a scream. It was the clink of a porcelain spoon against bone china, ting, as Lady Honoria Vale set it down with deliberate care. The second sound was the scrape of Captain Rusty Vale's chair as he leaned forward to spear a cherry from his gâteau. The third sound, 3:47 p.m. precisely, was the gasp. Lady Honoria's hand flew to her throat. Her pearls leapt as if alive, scattering across the marquetry table like hail on a tin roof. The gasp became a wheeze, thin, reedy, the sound of a bellows with a hole burned through it. Her eyes, pale blue, aristocratic, bulged until the whites showed all around. She tried to rise. The ebony cane clattered to the carpet. She toppled sideways, shoulder striking the samovar table with a clang that sent the silver lid spinning like a coin. Rusty was already on his feet. "Aunt!" The word fractured. His sunburnt face drained to chalk. He clutched his own throat, fingers scrabbling at the collar as if it had turned to wire. 2 steps, he staggered, knees buckling, and his temple met the sharp corner of a gilt occasional table with a crack like green wood on a fire. He folded motionless, a crimson thread creeping from beneath his hair onto the Aubusson's indigo field. Across the table, Daphne Lovelace half rose, coral lips parted in a perfect O. Her georgette dress caught on the chair's velvet arm, ripping with a soft rip. She pressed both palms to her sternum, nails painted the same violet as the room. A sound escaped her, not a scream but a hiccup, wet, desperate. Her knees gave way. She sank, cloche hat tumbling, blonde curls spilling like spilled cream. Felix Arden's monocle popped from his eye on its ribbon. He caught it mid-air. An actor's reflex, even as his throat convulsed. Poison, he croaked, voice suddenly a boy's. He lurched toward the windows, palms slapping the wartime glass. The panes rattled but did not yield. His forehead left a greasy print. He slid down, leaving a snail's trail of sweat and pomade. Within 90 seconds, 4 of the 6 were on the floor. The violet tea room, so lately a sanctuary of privilege, had become a charnel house scented with lapsang souchong and burnt almonds. Dr. Cornelius Shaw alone remained upright. His black case snapped open with a click that cut through the chaos like a scalpel. He knelt beside Lady Honoria, 2 fingers to her carotid. Nothing. Pupils fixed, lips already blue. He whirled to the samovar, lifted the lid, inhaled once. His nostrils flared. Prussic acid, hydrogen cyanide, vapor concentration lethal within minutes. His voice was clinical, but his hand trembled as he produced a syringe from the case. Amyl nitrite ampoule. Crack. Liquid drawn. Too late. He plunged it into Rusty's thigh anyway. The captain's body jerked once like a marionette with cut strings, then stilled. Madame Zara had not moved from her corner. Her veil trembled, but her hands were steady as she pressed a lace handkerchief to her mouth. "The spirits," she whispered, "they warned me. Do not touch the violet brew." Her accent, Balkan, Levantine, thickened with fear. The dumbwaiter hatch, 18 inches square, stood ajar. The brass bolt was drawn back, yet the hatch itself remained closed, the shaft yawning black and silent 4 stories to the pastry kitchen below. No ladder, no rope, no scent of cherry or flower drifting up. Only the faint metallic tang of the lift cables. Mr. Reginald Phipps arrived at 3:49 p.m., summoned by the emergency bell beside the service door. His key rattled in the lock, chunk, and he stumbled in, morning coat askew, face the color of wet ash. 2 constables followed, helmets under arms, whistles already at lips. Behind them, adjusting his mustaches with the precision of a watchmaker, stepped Monsieur Hercule Poirot. Poirot had been on the ground floor selecting handkerchiefs of the finest lawn when the bell shrilled. The commotion drew him like a bloodhound to truffles. Now he stood in the doorway, patent leather shoes planted wide, green eyes glittering beneath the bowler's brim. "Mon Dieu," he murmured, "a locked room au-dessous of Oxford Circus. The little gray cells, they tingle already." He surveyed the scene with the calm of a man ordering déjeuner. Poirot's gaze lingered on the samovar. The lid lay on the carpet, still spinning lazily. Steam no longer rose. The brew within had cooled to a treacherous amber. 6 cups, 4 half-empty, 2 untouched. The untouched belonged to Shaw and Zara. Phipps wrung his hands. "I locked the door myself at 3:15, sir. On my mother's grave. No one entered or left." His voice cracked like a schoolboy's. Poirot raised an eyebrow. "Yet the dumb waiter bolt is withdrawn, n'est-ce pas? And the hatch, voilà, it breathes." Constable Japp, broad, stolid, already sweating into his serge, cleared his throat. "Photographer's on his way, sir, and the yard's been wirelessed." Poirot waved a gloved hand. "First we preserve. Touch nothing." He stepped carefully around the bodies, shoes squeaking on the parquet. He lifted the samovar lid with a handkerchief, peered within, sniffed once. His mustaches bristled. "Almonds, yes. And something else. Crystallized sugar blocking the spout. Curious." Dr. Shaw rose, wiping his hands on a napkin. "I drank nothing. Allergic to tannin, gives me urticaria." He indicated his cup untouched, a faint ring of condensation at the base. Madame Zara nodded. "Spirits warned me. I poured my tea into the aspidistra." She pointed to the potted plant. The soil was dark, sodden. Poirot's eyes narrowed. He approached the dumb waiter. The hatch was 18 inches square, the bolt on the inside. No fingerprints. wiped clean with a silk handkerchief, perhaps. He knelt, shone his pocket torch down the shaft. 4 stories of blackness, the faint gleam of a metal tray far below. No ladder, no disturbance. He straightened, dusting his knees. "Impossible," he said softly, savoring the word. 4 dead, 2 alive, 1 room locked, 1 hatch bolted from within. Yet the poison is here. The little gray cells, they demand order. He turned to Phipps. "The key, s'il vous plaît." Phipps produced it from his inner pocket. Chub, 5 lever, warm from his body. Poirot examined it, held it to the light. "No duplicate?" "None issued since 1919, sir. Store policy." Poirot nodded. He addressed the constables. "Seal the room. No one touches the samovar until the chemical analyst arrives. The cups, label them. The gâteau, wrap it. The aspidistra, mon Dieu, water it with care. It may yet speak." He paused beside Daphne's body. Her missing shoe lay beneath the table, a violet satin pump, size 4. He picked it up with the handkerchief, turned it over. The sole was unmarked, no journey across the carpet. Curious. Dr. Shaw cleared his throat. "Rigor not yet set. Time of death between 3:45 and 3:50. Cyanide acts swiftly. They would have tasted the almond note, but by then..." He shrugged, a gesture both helpless and professional. Madame Zara's voice floated from the corner. "The veil is thin today. I see..." A hand pouring from below. Poirot's smile was thin. "Madam, the veil is always thin when the fees are high." The photographer arrived at 4:03 p.m., flashbulbs popping like gunfire. Each burst froze the scene in magnesium white, Lady Honoria's pearls glittering like frost. Rusty's blood a black pool, Daphne's kohl smudged into raccoon rings, Felix's monocle catching the light like a tiny moon. Poirot stood apart, hands clasped behind his back. He murmured to himself in French, too low for the others to catch. Then louder. 4 cups poisoned, 2 spared. Why? The samovar serves all equally. Unless the poison was added after pouring. But the lid was on. The spout blocked. Impossible. He noticed something then. Behind the aspidistra on the sideboard, a 7th cup, smaller, plainer. Empty. A faint smear of crimson lipstick, not coral, not Daphne's shade. He lifted it carefully. The base was warm, recently used. The room, already silent, seemed to hold its breath. Chapter 3. Investigation begins. Hercule Poirot stood at the exact center of the violet tea room, eyes half closed, the tips of his mustaches twitching like the antennae of some fastidious insect. The constables had withdrawn to the corridor. The photographer's magnesium haze still hung in the air like theatrical fog. Only Dr. Shaw, Madame Zara, and the trembling Mr. Phipps remained under Poirot's benevolent dictatorship. He began with the samovar. It was a magnificent beast, silver gilt, czarist crest half erased by decades of polishing, standing 3 feet high on claw and ball feet. Poirot lifted the lid with his silk handkerchief, clink, and peered within. The tea was the color of autumn leaves steeped too long. A faint almond vapor curled upward, acrid, intimate. He tilted the vessel gently. The spout was blocked, not by tea leaves but by a hard, crystalline plug of demerara sugar melted and rehardened into amber glass. "Tiens," he murmured. The poison could not have entered through the spout after brewing. The lid was sealed with wax. See the imprint of Sir Geoffrey's signet ring. Therefore, the cyanide was added before the water boiled. But how to lace only 4 cups when the samovar serves all? He set the lid down with reverence and turned to the teapot. Fine bone china, hand-painted violets, lid secured with a strip of scarlet sealing wax. He cracked it with a fingernail, snap, and inhaled. Pure lapsang souchong, smoky as a highland bothy. No trace of almonds. The poison, then, had been introduced after the tea was poured into the cups. Yet the samovar's spout was blocked. Impossible. Poirot's gaze swept the table. 6 cups, 4 half-drained, their contents now the color of weak coffee as the poison reacted with the tannin. 2 untouched, Dr. Shaw's and Madame Zara's. He lifted Lady Honoria's cup. A faint coral lipstick print on the rim, hers. Inside, a residue of gâteau crumbs and a single cherry stone. Rusty's cup, pipe tobacco flecks clinging to the porcelain like brown moss. Daphne's, coral again, but smudged as if she had tried to wipe it away. Felix's, a smear of brilliantine from his mustache. Shaw's and Zara's, pristine. Poirot placed the cups in a precise semicircle. He produced a small leather notebook and a silver propelling pencil. With the delicacy of a watchmaker, he sketched the table's layout. He underlined the word 7th 3 times. Next, the dumb waiter. Poirot knelt, knees creaking in sympathy with the parquet. The hatch was 18 inches square, the brass bolt on the inside. He slid it back and forth, snick, snick, smooth as butter. No fingerprints, the metal gleamed. He shone his torch down the shaft. 4 stories of darkness, the pastry kitchen's copper pans glinting far below like tiny suns. A faint smell of vanilla and burnt sugar drifted up. He noticed something. A single strand of violet silk caught on the pulley wheel. He teased it free with tweezers and sealed it in a glassine envelope. Une fibre, a clue perhaps, or a distraction. The windows. Poirot approached the central pane. Wartime glass, thick, slightly wavy. Painted shut since 1916. Flaking white lead in the corners. He pressed a gloved palm against it. Solid. He rapped with his knuckles. Thunk, thunk, no give. 60 feet to the pavement. Gulls wheeled over the traffic like white commas. He examined the sill. A thin layer of soot, undisturbed. No entry here. The key. Poirot beckoned Mr. Phipps. The manager approached, key already extended like a guilty offering. Poirot took it, held it to the chandelier light. Chubb 5-lever serial number 4472. He inserted it into the lock, chunk, turned it, withdrew it. He tried the handle, locked. He locked and unlocked 3 more times, each motion precise. No duplicate? None, sir. Store records confirm. Poirot slipped the key into his own waistcoat pocket. It will reside with Poirot now, pour la sécurité. He turned to the survivors, Dr. Cornelius Shaw. Poirot ushered him into the lift alcove. The doctor's hands were steady now, but a pulse beat at his temple. Dr. Shaw, you drank nothing? Allergic to tannin, urticaria within minutes, rashes, swelling. I never touch tea. Your cup, untouched. Yet you sat beside Captain Vale. I poured for him. He insisted on 2 sugars. I stirred, then set my own cup aside. Poirot's eyes narrowed. You are a nerve specialist. Cyanide. Would you recognize the odor? Instantly, bitter almonds. I smelled it the moment Lady Honoria gasped. And your black case? Shaw opened it. Syringes, ampoules, a small bottle labeled potassium cyanide for lab rats. Poirot's mustaches bristled. Pour les rats? In a tea room? Research. I was demonstrating a new antidote to Sir Geoffrey last week. He was curious about poisons. Poirot closed the case with a snap. We will speak again, docteur. Madame Zara, she, swept in trailing patchouli, veil lifted to reveal kohl-rimmed eyes the color of absinthe. Madame, you poured your tea into the aspidistra? The spirits warned me at 3:29 precisely. A voice, do not drink the violet brew. Poirot smiled thinly. Convenient. And the 7th cup? She hesitated. I saw nothing, but the veil is thin. I sensed a presence beneath the floor. Poirot bowed. Merci. The spirits, they are most obliging. Mr. Phipps. The manager was near collapse. I locked the door at 3:15, sir. On my oath. The lift was disabled, key in my pocket. Kitchen staff confirmed the dumbwaiter was unused after 2 p.m. Hatch bolted upstairs. Poirot tapped his chin. Yet the bolt is drawn. And the 7th cup, did you place it? Phipps shook his head violently. 6 settings only, as requested by Mr. Finch. The sideboard cup is for lemon slices. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Citron. Of course. Back in the tea room, Poirot examined the gâteau. 6 slices, each with a glazed cherry. He lifted Lady Honoria's plate. The cherry was missing. He found it under the table, intact, untouched. He wrapped it in tissue. Le cerisier. It will go to the analyst. The aspidistra. Poirot tipped the pot gently. The soil was sodden, dark, smelling of tea and something sharper. He plunged a gloved finger in, squelch, and withdrew a small glass vial, empty, cork missing. Label torn, but the letters KCN visible. He held it to the light, no fingerprints, wiped clean. He stood, dusting soil from his knees. Voila, the poison's cradle, but how did it reach the cups? He reconstructed the timeline on his notebook. 90 seconds from first sip to collapse. Cyanide. But the spout blocked. The teapot pure. The vial in the plant. He noticed something else. The sealing wax on the teapot lid was cracked in a perfect circle, as if a hypodermic needle had been inserted. He scraped the wax with a fingernail. A pinprick hole. Mon Dieu. He summoned Dr. Shaw. Doctor, your syringe. May I? Shaw handed it over. Poirot inserted the needle into the wax hole. Perfect fit. He withdrew it, sniffed. Faint almonds. Someone injected the cyanide into the teapot after sealing but before pouring. The sugar plug in the samovar, irrelevant, a blind. He paced, shoes squeaking. But why only 4 cups? The teapot serves all. He stopped. Unless the poison was added to the cups themselves before the tea was poured. A powder in the base dissolved instantly. He lifted Daphne's cup, tilted it to the chandelier. A faint white residue like salt. He touched it with a fingertip, tasted. Bitter. Almond. He checked the others. Honoria, Rusty, Daphne, Felix. All had the residue. Shaw and Zara, none. He smiled, the smile of a cat who has seen the cream. The cups were prepared in advance. The killer knew exactly who would sit where. He examined the chair seats. Beneath Daphne's cushion, a violet ribbon torn. Beneath Rusty's, a gambling IOU for 5,000 signed F. Beneath Felix's, a theater contract with Daphne's name crossed out in red. Poirot gathered the clues into envelopes. He stood beneath the chandelier, light fracturing into amethyst shards across his face. Mes amis, the stage is set. The poisoner is among us. Or was. The little gray cells, they begin to dance. He turned to the 7th cup. The crimson lipstick was not Daphne's coral. He scraped it with a knife, waxy, theatrical. He sniffed. Grease paint. An actor's prop. The room was silent save for the samovar's dying hiss. Poirot closed his notebook. Acte 1 is complete. Now, we wait for the curtain to rise on the killer. Chapter 4. Clues and red herrings. Hercule Poirot did not pace. He circumnavigated 3 precise turns around the octagonal table, patent leather shoes squeaking a polite counterpoint to the dying samovar. The constables had removed the bodies at dawn. Only chalk outlines remained. 4 white ghosts on indigo wool. Poirot paused at each outline, bowed slightly as if apologizing for the inconvenience of their demise. He retired to Fortnum and Mason at 10 o'clock, installed in a corner banquette with a tisane of verbena and a plate of madeleines. The Ritz would have been ostentatious. Fortnum's was civilized. He opened his notebook and, with the neatness of a calligrapher, listed motives. Captain Rusty Vale, disinherited unless Lady Honoria died before the new will was signed. Rusty's solicitor had telephoned at 9:15. The old will left him 200,000, the new one 200. A difference of 199 or 800, motive enough for any gambler. Mr. Felix Arden, theatrical producer. Daphne's contract gave him 60% of her earnings for 7 years. Marriage to Rusty would dissolve it. Felix had been heard threatening, "I'll see her in her grave first." Dr. Cornelius Shaw, Harley Street nerve specialist, Lady Honoria's physician for a decade, prescribed morphia for nerves. Rumor she planned to expose him for overprescribing to society ladies. His black case contained the cyanide vial, labeled yes but convenient. Madame Zara, spiritualist. Honoria had engaged a private detective to prove Zara's seances were fraud. Exposure in the will, a bequest of 1 shilling and a public denunciation. Miss Daphne Lovelace, the starlet. Secret marriage to Rusty in Gretna Green 3 weeks prior. Pregnancy confirmed by her maid. Honoria's death would secure the 200,000 for the child. Mr. Reginald Phipps, store manager. Harridge's was hemorrhaging money. Honoria threatened to sell to Selfridge's. Phipps would lose his life's work and his pension. Poirot underlined Phipps twice. A man who locked the door with his own hand might unlock it again. He finished his tisane, dabbed his mustaches, and summoned Jap by telephone. "Mon ami, I require files, discreetly." By noon, the red herrings arrived like a waiter's trolley, found in Rusty's blazer pocket, folded small enough to miss the first search. Yellow paper, Western Union. "Kill her tonight or lose everything, F." Sent from the Strand post office at 2:17 p.m. F could be Felix or forgery. Dr. Shaw's black case re-examined. The potassium cyanide for lab rat's bottle was half empty. Shaw's explanation: "I used it last month on a dozen white rats. Antidote trials." The laboratory log confirmed dates, but not quantity. Madame Zara's handbag yielded her crystal ball, swaddled in black velvet. A hairline crack ran from 3:30 to 3:30 on the engraved dial, exactly the minute the samovar hissed. "Spirit warning," she insisted. Poirot tapped it, ting, hollow. He held it to the light. The crack was painted on with clear nail varnish. Stagecraft. Recovered from the dumb waiter pulley by a uniformed constable with ambition. Left-hand glove, kid leather, violet dye, size small. Inside cuff, monogram DL, Daphne Lovelace. Daphne's maid swore her mistress owned no violet gloves, only coral. The dye was fresh, still tacky. The crimson lipstick was analyzed by Fortnum's cosmetic counter. Poirot's charm was irresistible. Brand, Rouge Théâtre No. 7, discontinued 1925, used exclusively by music hall artistes. Daphne wore Coral Kiss mass market, someone in disguise. Poirot arranged the herrings in a neat row on the banquette table like sardines on ice. He smiled. "Too many fish, mes amis. When the net is full of sprats, the salmon swims free." He paid his bill and took a taxicab to the Strand post office. The telegraph clerk remembered the sender. Tall gent, monocle smelling of pomade, paid cash, Felix Arden, or an impersonator. Next, the Harridge's staff entrance. The charwomen arrived at 5 a.m. One, Mrs. Elsie Muggins, 53 Bunions, recalled seeing a woman in violet gloves leaving the service lift at 6:45 a.m. "Thought it was Miss Lovelace, but she had a limp, funny that." Poirot's eyes gleamed. Daphne did not limp. He visited Daphne's flat in Bloomsbury. Her maid, flustered, produced a marriage certificate. Rusty and Daphne, Gretna Green, 22 April, and a doctor's letter. Patient 3 months gone, advise rest. Motive crystallized. Felix Arden's theater on Shaftesbury Avenue was dark, but the stage door yielded to Poirot's card. The dressing room smelled of grease paint and gin. On the mirror, scrawled in Daphne's coral lipstick, "You'll never clip my wings. Felix's appointment book, 3 p.m. T with H, poison the old bat. Crossed out, rewritten. T with H, discuss contract. Poirot photographed the page. Dr. Shaw's Harley Street consulting room was next. The nurse, starched and terrified, handed over the prescription ledger. Lady Honoria. Morphia 1 grain nightly, increased to 3 grains last month. Dangerous. Shaw's handwriting. Madame Zara's suite at the Savoy was a riot of incense and tarot cards. She greeted Poirot in a kimono embroidered with dragons. "The spirits are restless," she intoned. Poirot examined her crystal ball under a magnifying glass. The crack was indeed varnish. He found a receipt in the wastepaper basket. Selfridge's violet kid gloves, size small, purchased 12 May, paid in cash. Mr. Phipps was last summoned to Scotland Yard. He arrived clutching a ledger. Harridge's accounts 47,000 in debt. Honoria's letter dated $10 May. Sell to Selfridge's or close by Michaelmas. Phipps' pension, $300 per annum. Motive, ruin. Poirot gathered the red herrings into a dossier. Telegram, Felix, cyanide vial. Shaw, cracked ball. Zara, violet glove. Daphne, lipstick. Disguise. Charwoman. Limp, marriage. Daphne plus. Rusty, prescription. Shaw, accounts. Phipps. He added one more, the sealing wax needle hole. Only someone with medical knowledge could inject through wax without cracking it. Shaw. He leaned back in Jap's office chair. Jap offered a cigarette. Poirot refused. Mon ami, the picture is too perfect. When every suspect has a motive and a clue, the true killer hides in the frame. He telephoned the Yard's chemist. The cup residues, potassium cyanide, 2 grains per cup, lethal. The gâteau, clean. The cherry stone, clean. The aspidistra soil, trace cyanide, but diluted. The vial, Shaw's fingerprints absent, wiped. Poirot's smile was feline. The killer plants clues like a gardener plants bulbs, but one bulb is plastic. He returned to the violet tea room at twilight. The chalk outlines glowed faintly under the amethyst sconces. He stood where Lady Honoria had sat. He poured imaginary tea from the samovar, hiss, into an imaginary cup. He mimed stirring. He noticed something. The sugar bowl. Silver lid askew. Inside, not demerara, but white crystals. He tasted. Bitter. Almond. He weighed it on a pocket scale, 12 grains missing. Exactly 2 grains per poisoned cup times 6. But only 4 died. He opened the sugar lid fully. Beneath the false bottom, a miniature funnel, glass, needle-thin. It fitted the teapot's wax hole perfectly. He reconstructed. Killer prepared cups with cyanide powder. Added sugar from bowl. Normal sugar on top, poison below. Poured tea. Stirred. Shaw and Zara used no sugar, hence spared. The sugar bowl had been swapped after the crime. Normal sugar on top, poison compartment empty. A sleight of hand. He examined the dumb waiter again. The violet thread was not silk. It was rayon mass-produced 1926. Charwomen's uniform issue. He found a scuff mark on the parquet near the aspidistra. Heel of a man's shoe, size 10, nail pattern matching Phipps' brogues. Phipps had entered before the locking. The telegram F was typed on a Remington No. 5 theater typewriters. Felix used a Corona portable, forged. The glove dye was aniline, available at any costumier. Daphne's maid. Miss never wore violet, said it aged her. The crystal ball crack, varnish still tacky, applied after 3:47. Poirot gathered the real clues. The red herrings swim in circles, the shark is beneath. He telephoned Jap. Mon ami, guard the survivors. The killer will strike again to silence the loose thread. At 8:17 p.m. the telephone rang. Daphne Lovelace had vanished from her guarded hotel room. Only a violet ribbon on the carpet and a single cherry stone on the pillow. Poirot's eyes narrowed. The curtain falls on Act 2, but the play is not finished. Chapter 5, Complications and Twists. Hercule Poirot stood in the lobby of the Grand Metropolitan Hotel at 8:47 p.m., bowler hat in hand, eyes glittering like wet pebbles. The night porter, a former sergeant major with a face like a crumpled map, saluted out of habit. "Miss Lovelace's room, s'il vous plaît. Suite 412, and the constable on duty. Where is he?" The porter swallowed. "Constable Hargreaves, sir, took ill sudden-like, retchin' in the gents. Sent him home in a cab." Poirot's mustaches bristled. "Maladie subite, convenient." The lift cage rattled upward, brass indicator trembling at 4. Suite 412 was at the end of a corridor carpeted in crimson Wilton, the color of arterial blood under gaslight. The door stood ajar. A single violet ribbon lay across the threshold like a crime scene marker. Poirot pushed the door with one gloved finger. The room was in disarray, bed unmade, sheets twisted as if someone had thrashed in sleep. Dressing table mirror cracked in a spider web from the center, a half-written letter on the blotter. "Dearest R, if anything happens to me." On the pillow, a single glazed cherry glistening intact, no Daphne, no struggle, no blood. Poirot knelt. The carpet bore 2 sets of footprints, small, narrow, high-heeled. Daphne's size 4 satin pumps. Larger, broader men's brogues, size 10. The same nail pattern as the scuff in the tea room. The larger prints overlaid the smaller, then exited alone. He opened the wardrobe. Daphne's dresses hung in a pastel regiment. One gap, the violet georgette from the tea missing. The bathroom, bath taps dripping. A violet glove, the mate to the one in the dumbwaiter, draped over the towel rail. Inside the glove, a theater ticket stub, Shaftesbury Avenue, matinee, 12th of May. On the mirror, scrawled in coral lipstick, "The play isn't over." Poirot photographed everything with his miniature Kodak. He pocketed the cherry, the ribbon, the stub. Downstairs, the night porter produced the register. At 7:12 p.m., a charwoman in violet gloves had signed into Clean Suite 412. Description: limped, veiled, carried a bucket. Left at 7:49 p.m. No one thought to stop her. The constable was already retching. Poirot telephoned Jap. "Mon ami, the cherry is bait. Guard the theater and find me Dr. Shaw, vite." At 10:15 p.m., the samovar vanished. Scotland Yard's sealed evidence locker, locked, guarded, key with Inspector Jap, was found empty. Only a violet ribbon tied around the handle of the locker door. The duty sergeant swore no one had entered. The lock was untouched. Impossible. Poirot arrived at the yard with the dawn. He examined the locker. The ribbon was rayon, identical to the dumbwaiter thread. He sniffed the hinges, faint almond vapor. The samovar had been inside the locker, then removed. But how? He reconstructed. Killer eatered with a duplicate key, molded from wax impression. Removed samovar, left ribbon as signature. But the sergeant had the only key. Unless, Poirot examined the sergeant's boots. Size 10, nail pattern. The sergeant blushed crimson. "Borrowed Mr. Phipps's spare boots yesterday, sir. Mine had a hole." Poirot smiled thinly. "Naturellement." At 11:30 a.m., Dr. Shaw confessed. Summoned to the yard, he collapsed into a chair, face gray. "I supplied morphia to Lady Honoria, yes, too much. She was addicted. She threatened to ruin me, but the cyanide, never." "I swear it." Poirot offered a cigarette. Shaw took it with trembling fingers. "Your syringe fitted the wax hole." "Coincidence? Any hypodermic would. Your vial was half empty. Lab rats. Your boots. Phipps lent them." Poirot leaned close. "Docteur, someone used your tools, but not you. You are the scapegoat." Shaw wept. At 2 p.m., Madame Zara produced evidence. In her Savoy suite, she unveiled a spirit photograph. Lady Honoria's ghost. pearls glowing, pointing at Captain Rusty. Developed at 3:30 p.m. on the 13th. "Proof!" she cried. Poirot examined the negative under a loupe. Double exposure. The ghost wore a 1927 Belova wristwatch. Honoria's wrist had been bare. He found the camera in Zara's trunk, a Kodak vest pocket theater prop. The ectoplasm was cigarette smoke. Zara paled. "The spirits are excellent photographers," Poirot finished. He confiscated the camera. At 4:00 p.m., the second murder. Felix Arden was found in his theater dressing room, throat cut ear to ear. The weapon, a stage dagger, blade coated in prussic residue. On the mirror in blood, Act 2. The theater was locked, no forced entry. The dagger belonged to the prop cupboard, key missing. Poirot arrived with Jap. The dressing room smelled of grease paint and iron. Felix's monocle lay in the blood, reflecting the gas mantle like a tiny moon. His appointment book, 3:30 p.m. Meet D. Urgent, crossed out. Poirot lifted the dagger with a handkerchief. The blade was real, swapped for the retractable one. He examined the cut, left to right, deep, professional. A surgeon's stroke, or a producer's flare. He found a violet ribbon tied around the doorknob, inside. The door had been locked from within. The key was in Felix's pocket. Impossible. At 6:00 p.m., Poirot ordered the dumbwaiter shaft searched. Firemen lowered a ladder from the tea room. At the bottom, 4 stories down, a child's marionette dressed as Poirot, bowler mustache, patent shoes. Strings cut, a note pinned to the vest. "Your move, little man." Poirot's eyes narrowed to slits. The taunt was personal. At 8:00 p.m., Daphne reappeared. She stumbled into the lobby of the Grand Metropolitan, barefoot, georgette torn, hair wild. "I was drugged," she gasped. "Woke in a theater, flies and ropes." A voice said, "Tell Poirot the sugar is sweet." She collapsed, smelling faintly of almonds. The doctor confirmed, chloral hydrate, no cyanide. At 10 p.m., Poirot gathered the survivors in the yard's interview room. Dr. Shaw, Madame Zara, Mr. Phipps, Daphne wrapped in a blanket. Jap stood guard. Poirot laid the clues on the table like a deck of cards. He spoke softly. "The killer plays a game. 4 dead. 1 vanished, returned. 1 samovar stolen. 1 throat cut in a locked room. All impossibilities. But impossibilities are lies told by geometry." He turned to Phipps. "You lent boots to the sergeant." Phipps nodded. "You have access to all keys." "Yes." "You knew the dumbwaiter shaft." "I supervised its installation in 1912. Poirot turned to Daphne. "You married Rusty." She nodded, tears falling. "You are with child." A gasp. "You wore violet only once. Today, drugged." He turned to Shaw. "Your syringe was stolen." Shaw nodded. "Your vial, emptied." He turned to Zara. "Your photographs, fakes." He paused. "The killer is not among you. The killer is all of you, a conspiracy, but one puppet master." He produced the marionette. The face was hand-carved. The mustache, real hair. He turned it over. On the back in tiny script, P. Phipps blanched. "Initial of the maker," Poirot said. "Or the murderer." He laid the final clue, a floor plan of Harridge's, the tea room, the dumbwaiter, the air raid trapdoor beneath the Aubusson, forgotten since 1918, marked in red ink. The killer entered before the locking, hid in the trapdoor, laced the cups, exited below, returned for the samovar, killed Felix to silence him, kidnapped Daphne to confuse. He looked at Phipps. "You recruited Daphne, your daughter. Illegitimate. Honoria's husband's bastard. You planned to save the store and claim the inheritance." Phipps lunged. Jap tackled him. Daphne screamed. Shaw stared. Zara fainted. Poirot sighed. "But you made one mistake. The marionette. You mocked me. Hercule Poirot does not forgive mockery. He produced the real samovar. hidden in Phipps's office safe, wrapped in the violet glove, containing the missing cyanide bottle. Phipps spat. "You'll never prove," Poirot smiled. "Au contraire, the cherry stones, Daphne's blood type. The boots, the ribbons, the grease paint, your shade, Mr. Phipps, from your amateur theatrics in the war." He turned to the room. "Mesdames et messieurs, the complications end. The revelation comes next." Chapter 6. The revelation. The violet tea room had been restored to its fatal elegance. 6 chairs, 6 cups, the samovar, returned from Phipps's safe, hissing like a caged asp. The Aubusson carpet was rolled back, revealing the wartime trapdoor. A square of oak, iron hinges green with verdigris, a brass ring flush with the parquet. Poirot had ordered it opened. The shaft beneath dropped 3 feet to the lingerie department's stockroom. Dark, smelling of lavender sachets and mothballs. At 7:01 p.m. on the 14th of May, the survivors were assembled. Dr. Cornelius Shaw, hands bandaged from Phipps's lunge. Madame Zara, veil discarded, face bare and defiant. Daphne Lovelace, wrapped in a borrowed dressing gown, eyes swollen. Mr. Reginald Phipps, wrists in cuffs, flanked by 2 constables. Inspector Japp stood by the door, arms folded. Hercule Poirot occupied the head of the table, Bowler on the chair beside him like a silent witness. He began without preamble. "Mesdames et messieurs, the crime appears impossible. A locked room, a bolted hatch, windows sealed. 4 poisoned by cyanide, 2 spared, 1 samovar stolen, 1 throat cut, 1 starlet kidnapped. Yet the solution is simple, when one looks down, not up." He lifted the trapdoor ring. The hinges groaned. A draft rose, cool and papery. He shone his torch. The stockroom below was stacked with hat boxes. A ladder leaned against the wall, aluminium, folding, modern. He had found it in Phipps's office, wrapped in violet ribbon. Voila, the door beneath the carpet, installed 1916 for air raid drills. Forgotten by all except the store manager. He closed the trap door with a thud. Before 3:15 p.m., Phipps, using his master key, entered via the trap door from below. He hid. Poirot produced the sugar bowl. He twisted the base. Click, revealing the compartment. White crystals glittered. He poured a pinch onto a saucer, touched it with a glass rod dipped in silver nitrate. The solution turned milky. Cyanide. The spout blockage? Irrelevant. The needle hole in the wax? A blind? The real poison was in the cups, dissolved by the tea. He turned to the dumbwaiter. He slid the bolt. The hatch opened. He reached inside and withdrew a thin copper tube coiled like a serpent. It fitted the pulley wheel perfectly. From below it could have injected liquid into the cups. Another blind. He had found it in Phipps's safe, wrapped in the violet glove. The tube was never used, but it planted doubt. He laid out the red herrings like a magician revealing cards. Telegram, typed on Phipps's office, Remington, F, for Felix. Cyanide vial emptied by Phipps, planted in Shaw's case. Cracked crystal ball, varnish applied by Phipps in Zara's handbag. Violet glove purchased by Phipps at Selfridge's, monogram stitched with theatrical thread. Marionette, carved by Phipps in the store's workshop, mocking Poirot. He produced the stage dagger. The blade was real, swapped by Phipps during a routine inspection of the theater prop cupboard. Felix had discovered Daphne's paternity, Phipps's illegitimate daughter, and threatened exposure. Phipps lured him to the dressing room, locked the door from inside, cut the throat, exited via the flies, theatrical rigging, leaving the key in Felix's pocket. The locked dressing room. Child's play for a man who knows trapdoors. He turned to Daphne. "You are Phipps's daughter by a shopgirl, 1903. Honoria's husband paid hush money. You married Rusty for the inheritance. Phipps recruited you to plant herrings, the ribbon, the lipstick message. You were drugged to silence you. Daphne wept. He said it was for the store. For us. Poirot produced the samovar. Inside, wrapped in the violet glove, the original cyanide bottle. Phipps's fingerprints now visible under powder. He had worn gloves during the crime, but not when hiding the evidence. He turned to Phipps. Your motive? Harridge's was your life. Honoria planned to sell to Selfridge's. You would lose everything. But there was more. You were Honoria's first husband, legally dead in the war, bigamously married to her, shop girl. You returned to claim the store and the 2 million. Phipps laughed, a dry rattle. You'll never prove bigamy. Poirot produced a marriage certificate, Reginald Phipps to Honoria Grant, 1899, Gretna Green, and a death notice, 1916, falsified by Phipps himself. The little gray cells, they do not lie. He reconstructed the final impossibility, the stolen samovar from the yard's locker. Phipps had molded a wax impression of Japp's key during a routine statement. Entered at night, removed the samovar, left the ribbon. The sergeant's borrowed boots, Phipps's own, left the scuff. Poirot poured tea from the safe 7th cup into 6 new cups. He offered one to each survivor. Shaw drank, Zara drank, Daphne drank. Phipps refused. Poirot raised his cup. À la vérité? He laid the final proof on the table. A locket from Daphne's neck, opened to reveal a photograph of a young Phipps in naval uniform. On the back, to my darling girl, Papa. Phipps lunged again. The constables restrained him. He spat. She was going to sell my store. Poirot's voice was soft thunder. You poisoned 4 innocents to save bricks and mortar. You mocked Poirot with a marionette. You cut a man's throat for silence. You drugged your own daughter. No, justice is not yours to dispense. He turned to Japp. Charge him with 4 murders, 1 attempted, 1 kidnapping, theft, forgery, bigamy. The jury will weep. Daphne signed a confession. Accessory, planted herrings. Shaw was cleared. Zara fled to Paris that night. Poirot stood beneath the chandelier, light fracturing into violet shards. He lifted the trapdoor one last time. The ladder gleamed. He closed it. Fin. He sipped the safe tea. The little gray cells, they never lie. Santé. Chapter 7. Justice served. The trial began on the 3rd of October, 1927, in No. 1 Court at the Old Bailey. The public gallery was packed with silk hats and feather boas. The press bench overflowed with shorthand notebooks. Reginald Phipps stood in the dock, morning coat exchanged for prison gray, wrists cuffed, face a mask of polite contempt. Beside him in the co-defendant's box sat Daphne Lovelace, pale, pregnant, veiled in black lace. The charge sheet was read in a clerk's nasal drone. Reginald Arthur Phipps, 4 counts of murder by poison, 1 count of murder by blade, 1 count of attempted murder, 1 count of kidnapping, 1 count of theft, 2 counts of forgery, 1 count of bigamy. Daphne Margaret Lovelace, accessory after the fact. Poirot sat in the witness corridor, bowler on his knee, answering the usher's summons with the calm of a man ordering sole meunière. Sir Edward Hargreaves, K.C., rose like a galleon under sail. He painted the violet tea room in vivid strokes, the hiss of the samovar, the scatter of pearls, the almond breath of death. He laid the sugar bowl on the evidence table, false bottom twisted open, cyanide crystals, glittering like frost. He produced the trapdoor ladder, the copper tube, the violet glove with Phipps' monogram now visible under ultraviolet light. He held aloft the marionette, Poirot's caricature, its strings dangling like a hanged man. The jury gasped. A woman in the gallery fainted. Hercule Poirot entered the box at 11:07 a.m. He bowed to the judge, adjusted his tie, and spoke in crisp, accented English that carried to the rafters. My lord, the crime was not impossible. It was meticulous. Mr. Phipps knew every bolt, every hinge, every forgotten corner of Harridge's. He entered via the air raid trap door at 3:10 p.m., concealed himself in the hollow aspidistra, emerged at 3:30, poisoned 4 pre-selected cups with cyanide from the sugar bowl's false compartment, and exited the same way. He locked the room from the inside, descended, and reappeared as the shocked manager. The dumb waiter bolt was drawn from below to create confusion. The copper tube was a blind, never used. The 7th cup with crimson grease paint was Phipps in charwoman's disguise, drinking safely while the others died. He demonstrated with a replica sugar bowl, twist, click, the compartment opening to reveal harmless salt. He produced the locket from Daphne's neck, Papa's photograph. He laid the marriage certificate of 1899 beside the falsified death notice of 1916. He ended with the samovar, wrapped in the violet glove cyanide bottle inside, Phipps' fingerprints glowing under powder. Cross-examination by Mr. Montague Finch, K.C. for the defense was a duel of velvet gloves. Finch: You claim my client hid in a plant pot? Poirot: Fiberglass, hollow, 36 inches deep. I tested it myself. Finch: The samovar vanished from a guarded locker. Poirot: Wax impression of Inspector Japp's key, taken during a statement. The ribbon was rayon, charwomen's issue. Finch: The marionette? Poirot: Carved in the store workshop, initial P on the back. Mockery is the criminal's vanity. Poirot stepped down at 3:42 p.m. The jury's eyes followed him like compass needles. Daphne took the stand at 10:15 a.m. Her voice was small, steady. My father, Mr. Phipps, told me Honoria would sell the store. We would lose everything. He said the poison was only to make them sleep, to delay the will. I planted the ribbon, the lipstick message, the glove, and the pulley. I believed him. When Felix found the locket, Papa said he had to die. I was drugged to keep me quiet. I am guilty of lies, but not of murder. She wept. The judge offered a glass of water. She drank. Phipps spoke for 47 minutes. He claimed Honoria had ruined lives, his first marriage, his death, his store. He admitted the poison but denied intent to kill. It was meant for Honoria alone, the others collateral. He blamed Daphne for the cup selection. He blamed Shaw for the syringe. He blamed Poirot for Belgian theatrics. The jury did not smile. Sir Edward's closing was a cathedral of rhetoric. He held the marionette aloft. This is what Phipps thought of human life, puppets to be cut down. He placed the locket on the jury bench. This is what he thought of his daughter, property to inherit. He pointed to the trapdoor ladder. This is how low he sank to climb over corpses. Mr. Finch's defense was a whisper. A man cornered. A store is life. Mitigate. At 2:17 p.m., the jury returned after 3 hours and 11 minutes. The foreman, a silversmith from Clerkenwell, stood. On all counts, guilty. Phipps did not flinch. Daphne swayed. A wardress caught her. The judge, Mr. Justice Avery, donned the black cap. Reginald Arthur Phipps, you have been convicted of crimes of calculated wickedness. You poisoned 4 souls in a locked room. You cut a man's throat for silence. You used your own daughter as a pawn. The sentence of this court is that you be taken to the prison of Pentonville, and there hanged by the neck until you are dead. And may God have mercy on your soul. Phipps was led away. His footsteps echoed like a slow drum. Daphne received 3 years for accessory, suspended due to pregnancy. She was released into the care of a convent in Dorset. Poirot returned to the Violet tea room on a November afternoon, alone. The store had closed. Selfridges had bought it for a song. Dust sheets covered the samovar. The trap door was nailed shut. He stood where Lady Honoria had fallen, pearls scattered like frost. He placed a single white camellia on the parquet. He murmured, Pauvre femme, you sought to sell a dream. He sought to bury it in poison. He turned to leave. At the door he paused. On the threshold lay a violet ribbon, fresh. He picked it up, sniffed. Patchouli. Madame Zara's calling card. He smiled faintly. Adieu, madame. The spirits, they keep their secrets. On the 9th of December, 1927, at 8:00 a.m., Reginald Phipps was hanged at Pentonville. The trapdoor fell with a crash. The prison clock struck 8. Outside, a newsboy shouted, "Poirot solves violet tea room mystery. Killer drops." Poirot took the boat train to Dover. In his compartment, he opened the Times. Page 7. Harrods to reopen as Selfridge's Annex, violet tea room to become ladies' powder room. He folded the paper, adjusted his mustaches, and ordered a tisane from the steward. "Voila," he said to the window. "Justice is served. The little gray cells, they rest." Chapter 8. Echoes in Violet. The 9th of December, 1927, dawned cold and iron gray over Pentonville Prison. At 8:00 a.m. precisely, the trapdoor beneath Reginald Phipps fell with a crash that reverberated through the stone corridors like a judge's final syllable. The prison clock struck the hour. Outside the gates, a knot of reporters stamped their feet against the frost, breath pluming like cigar smoke. A newsboy's cry cut through the fog. Violet tea room. Killer hanged. Poirot's triumph. Inside the execution chamber, the hangman, Albert Pierre Point's uncle Thomas, adjusted the knot with professional calm. Phipps had refused a hood. His last words, recorded by the warden, were, "Tell Daphne the store was hers all along." The body dropped. The rope creaked. Justice in its most ancient form was served. Daphne Lovelace, now Sister Margaret of the Order of St. Clare, knelt in the chapel of a gray stone convent near Shaftesbury. Her sentence suspended, her child due in March, she had taken vows of silence and service. The Mother Superior, a woman with eyes like winter lakes, allowed her one visitor per month. On the 15th of December, Hercule Poirot arrived in a hired Daimler. Bowler in hand, a small parcel wrapped in brown paper. He was shown to the parlor, a room of plain oak and lavender polish. Daphne entered, habit rustling, face pale beneath the wimple. The violet georgette dress was a memory. Coral lipstick, a sin. Poirot bowed. "Ma petite, you are well?" She nodded, eyes lowered. He placed the parcel on the table. Inside, a silver christening cup engraved with a single violet, and a letter from the Selfridges board. Harrods had been saved, not sold, but merged. A trust fund in the child's name, $50,000. Phipps' final forgery, a codicil to the original will, had been upheld. Honoria's true heir was Daphne's unborn baby. She wept silently. Poirot patted her hand. "Your father's last act was redemption. The store lives. So will you." He left a white camellia on the windowsill. 2 weeks later, Scotland Yard Inspector Japp invited Poirot to the Black Museum for a private viewing. The violet tea room exhibit was already installed. The samovar, lid frozen open. The sugar bowl, false bottom exposed. The marionette, strings cut, eyes staring. The violet glove, monogram glowing under glass. A photograph of the trapdoor, ladder extended like a guilty finger. Japp offered a whiskey. Poirot accepted a finger. La Progue, pity as justice. "To the little gray cells," Japp toasted. Poirot raised his glass. "And to the ghosts who no longer walk." They stood in silence. The marionette's painted smile seemed to twitch. 1 month later, the Savoy Grill. Madame Zara, real name Mrs. Evelyn Pratt, née Cohen, dined alone at a corner table. Her turban was gone. Her hair was bobbed platinum. She had fled to Paris, then returned under a new passport. A single violet ribbon lay beside her plate like a bookmark. A waiter delivered an envelope. Inside a photograph, her spirit photograph of Honoria with Poirot's annotation in red ink. Double exposure, the ghost wears a 1927 Bulova. And a check for 500 hush money from the Vale estate arranged by Poirot. On the back, for services to the Vale, HP. She laughed, a low, smoky sound. She tucked the check into her garter and ordered lapsang souchong. No sugar. 6 weeks later, Harley Street. Dr. Cornelius Shaw reopened his practice with a brass plate polished to a mirror. His waiting room smelled of carbolic and lilies. A new sign. Nerve specialist, by appointment only. His black case now contained only aspirin and tincture of valerian. A patient, a dowager with a tic, asked, "Were you truly cleared, doctor?" Shaw smiled, pale but steady. "Monsieur Poirot's logic is sharper than any scalpel. I prescribe it daily." He kept the syringe that had fitted the wax hole, mounted in a shadow box above his desk. A reminder. 2 months later, the Orient Express Poirot boarded the Simplon Orient at Victoria Station bound for Istanbul. His compartment was luxurious. Walnut paneling, lace antimacassars, a samovar, brass not silver, hissing gently. He poured a cup of Darjeeling, no sugar. The train lurched, wheels singing on the rails. A porter delivered a telegram. "Child born healthy boy, named Hercule, thank you. Sister M." Poirot's mustaches curled with pleasure. He pinned the telegram above the window like a medal. At Dover he posted a parcel to Dorset, a tiny bowler hat, hand-knitted with a note. "For the little detective. HP." 3 months later, Regent Street Selfridges unveiled the new Harridge's Annex. The violet tea room was gone, replaced by a powder room in Art Deco jade and gold, a brass plaque on the wall. "In memory of those who fell in the violet tea room, 13 May 1927. Truth is the sweetest perfume." The aspidistra, the real one, not the fiberglass prop, stood in the corner, thriving. A cleaner watered it daily. No one noticed the faint almond scent that lingered in the soil. 6 months later, Biarritz Madame Zara, Evelyn Pratt, opened a boutique spiritualist salon on the seafront. Her sign, Zara, Visions in Violet. Her first client, a French countess seeking her late poodle. Zara produced a crystal ball, genuine this time, no varnish cracks. She saw nothing. But the countess wept anyway. In her flat above the salon, Zara kept a locked drawer. Inside, the 7th cup, crimson lipstick still on the rim. She drank from it nightly, herbal tea, no sugar. A penance. 1 year later, the Times obituary, Lady Honoria Vale, shipping heiress, Dean 13 May 1927. Survived by great-nephew Captain R. Vale, D. Same. Estate to charitable trust. No flowers. Poirot read it in his Brussels apartment, sipping tisane de verveine. He clipped the notice, placed it in a leather folder marked Affaires Classées. Beside it, the white camellia, pressed flat, still fragrant. 18 months later, Dorset young Hercule Phipps, toddler, blonde curls, violet eyes, chased a wooden train across the convent garden. Sister Margaret watched from the cloister, habit fluttering. A parcel arrived, a child's magnifying glass, silver-handled. Note: "For the little gray cells, Uncle H." She smiled. The camellia bush by the gate bloomed white, against the stone. 2 years later, Pentonville. The execution chamber was repainted, the trapdoor replaced, a new plaque. Site of the last hanging for the Violet Tea Room murders, 9 Deck 1927, tour groups whispered. A guide told the story, the sugar, the trapdoor, the marionette. Children shivered deliciously. 5 years later, a London bookshop. A slim volume appeared, The Violet Tea Room Mystery, as told to Captain Hastings by Hercule Poirot. First edition, 5,000 copies, sold out in a week. Chapter 8 ended, And so, my friend, the poison was served, the trapdoor closed, and the little gray cells, they danced their final waltz in violet. Poirot signed copies at Hatchard's, mustaches magnificent. A little girl in a violet coat asked, "Did the plant really hide a man?" Poirot twinkled. "Ma petite, the world is full of hollow things. Some hide murderers, some hide hope." He gave her a white camellia. 10 years later, the powder room. A debutante powdered her nose beneath the jade mirror. She noticed the aspidistra. Its leaves trembled. She laughed. Drafty old place. The cleaner watered it. The almond scent was gone. Epilogue: Poirot's retirement. In 1937, Poirot retired to a villa in Normandy. His garden bloomed with white camellias. On the terrace, a samovar, brass, dented, hissed gently. He poured tea for a visitor. Captain Hastings, graying, nostalgic. Hastings lifted the marionette, restrung, eyes repainted. "Still have it, old chap," Poirot smiled. "A reminder, every puppet has a master, every master has a trapdoor." He raised his cup. "To the echoes in violet." They drank. The camellias nodded in the breeze. Chapter 9. The Seventh Cup. The villa stood on a cliff above Etched, white stucco glowing in the late summer sun. Hercule Poirot, now 80, sat on the terrace beneath a pergola heavy with wisteria. His mustaches were silver, but the eyes, the eyes, still green as absinthe. A brass samovar, dented but polished, hissed gently on a wrought-iron table. Beside it, the seventh cup, bone china, crimson lipstick, long faded, yet the rim still bore a faint kiss. A motor car crunched up the gravel drive. A young man stepped out, 20, blonde curls, violet eyes, a Royal Navy duffel bag slung over one shoulder. He wore a tiny knitted bowler hat pinned to his lapel like a regimental badge. Hercule Phipps, now midshipman Phipps, home on leave from HMS Illustrious. Poirot rose, cane tapping the tiles. "Mon filleul, you are tall like your grandfather." Young Hercule saluted, then grinned. "Permission to come aboard, Uncle Hercule." "Granted, sit. The samovar remembers you." They poured Darjeeling, no sugar. The boy produced a yellowed envelope sealed with violet wax. "From the convent. Sister Margaret, my mother, died last winter. She left this for you. Said to deliver it on my 20th birthday." Poirot's hand trembled as he broke the seal. Inside, a single sheet of convent notepaper, Daphne's handwriting frail but steady. "Dearest Uncle Hercule, the doctors say months, not years. The child you saved thrives, but one truth I kept, even from him. The seventh cup was never safe. Papa poisoned it too. I drank from it that day, only a sip, to prove loyalty. I lived because I was already immune. Papa fed me tiny doses for weeks. Like Mithridates, he said, I was his shield. Forgive me. The camellia bush blooms because of you." Sister Monsieur Poirot's eyes misted. He turned the letter over. On the back, a child's drawing in violet crayon. A samovar, 6 cups crossed out, 1 cup with a halo. Beneath, "For Uncle Hercule, the man who saw through sugar." The boy watched, uncertain. "Mother said you'd understand." Poirot folded the letter, slipped it into his waistcoat. "Oui. I understand everything, except why the innocent suffer for the guilty." He lifted the 7th cup, turned it to the light. The crimson stain was not grease paint. It was Daphne's blood, pricked from her finger the night before the tea. A silent vow. Flashback, the night before the crime. 13 May 1927, 11:42 p.m. Harridge's manager's office. Phipps paced, ledger open, red ink bleeding. Daphne sat opposite, 3 months pregnant, violet ribbon in her hair. He slid the sugar bowl across the desk. "Tomorrow you sit at the corner, use this cup." He opened the false bottom. Cyanide crystals glittered. "I've been giving you traces in your cocoa. Mithridates' trick. You'll taste almonds, feel dizzy, but live. The others? He shrugged. Daphne touched her belly. And the child? We'll inherit everything. Honoria sells, we lose the store. This saves us. She pricked her finger with a hat pin, pressed it to the seventh cup's rim. For luck, she whispered. Phipps kissed her forehead. My brave girl. Back to 1947. The terrace young Hercule refilled Poirot's cup. Mother said Papa wasn't all monster. He carved the marionette to look like you, said you were the only man he feared. Poirot chuckled. A compliment, non. He opened a cedar box. Inside, the original marionette, restrung, eyes repainted kind. He had kept it all these years. He handed it to the boy. Your grandfather's last work of art. Keep it. Remember the man, not the crime. The boy turned it over. On the back, faint carving. To H.P. The puppet master's master. London, 1948. The powder room. The Harridge's annex thrived. The aspidistra in the powder room grew monstrous, leaves like elephant ears. A new cleaner, Mrs. Elsie Muggins, retired, bunions cured, watered it daily. One morning she found a violet ribbon tied around the pot. Inside the soil, a small silver capsule sealed, engraved KCN 1927, the last of Phipps' poison. She took it to the police. The capsule was empty, had been for 20 years. A final message. I could have, but didn't. The capsule was melted down. The ribbon burned. Normandy, 1952. Poirot's garden. Poirot, now 85, walked the camellia path with a toddler. Young Hercule's son named Geoffrey after the shipping magnate. The child carried the seventh cup, now a planter for African violets. Roots curled through the handle. Poirot knelt, arthritic but gentle. Petite, every cup has a story. This one held poison and love. The child laughed, watered the violets with a toy can. London, 1955, the Black Museum. The Violet Tea Room exhibit was updated. A new plaque. The seventh cup, immunity through love, donated by Midshipman H. Phipps, R.N. Beside it, Daphne's letter framed. Visitors lingered longest here. A schoolboy asked the guide, did the lady really drink poison? The guide smiled. She drank forgiveness. Normandy, 1960. The N. Poirot died on the 23rd of April, aged 93. His last visitor, Captain Hercule Phipps, now 33, 3 children, camellia in his buttonhole. Poirot lay in bed, samovar hissing on the nightstand. He pressed the seventh cup into the captain's hand. Plant something good, mon filleul. Violets, perhaps. His eyes closed. The little gray cells danced their final waltz. The funeral. A small gathering in the village church. The marionette sat on the coffin, strings tied in a bow. The seventh cup, now overflowing with African violets, stood on the altar. Captain Phipps read the eulogy. He saw through sugar, through trapdoors, through lies. He saw the child in the woman, the redemption in the villain. He taught us that every poison has an antidote. Truth. Epilogue. The Garden, 1977. Young Geoffrey Phipps, now a detective sergeant, stood beneath the pergola. The samovar was gone, but the seventh cup remained, rooted deep, violets blooming purple against white camellias. He watered it from a silver can. A violet ribbon fluttered in the breeze, tied by his father, renewed every year. On the bottom of the cup, etched by Poirot's own hand. The last clue was love. A tourist asked, "What's the story?" Geoffrey smiled. Once a cup held death. Now it holds life. That's the real impossible crime. He tipped his hat, a tiny knitted bowler, and walked away. The violets nodded, the camellias bowed. The samovar, wherever it was, hissed no more. Chapter 10. The Violet Legacy. The villa had become a museum. Maison Hercule Poirot. White stucco gleamed under a May sky the color of Lapsang Souchong. Tourists queued along the gravel path, tickets clutched like passports to 1927. Inside, the terrace pergola dripped wisteria. The brass samovar, restored, dented, legendary, hissed on its original table. Beside it, the seventh cup, now a living relic. African violets spilling over the rim, roots threaded through the handle like veins of memory. At 3:30 p.m. precisely, a bell rang, ting, and the crowd fell silent. A woman stepped onto the terrace. Dr. Violet Phipps, 60, great-granddaughter of Daphne Lovelace, curator of the museum. She wore a violet silk scarf pinned with the tiny knitted bowler. Her voice carried the hush of libraries and the lilt of the sea. Mesdames et messieurs, 100 years ago in a locked room above Regent Street, poison was served in violet tea. Today we serve only truth. She lifted the seventh cup. The violets trembled. She poured Darjeeling, no sugar, into 6 modern cups, then a 7th. She offered the 7th to a child in the front row, Hercule Phipps, 9, age 7, violet eyes, gap-toothed grin. He drank. The crowd applauded. No one fell. The museum tour, room by room, room 1, the locked door. A replica of the violet tea room door, Chubb lock, 5-lever, key in a glass case. Beside it, the original key worn smooth by Phipps' pocket. A plaque. Locked at 3:15 p.m., unlocked by truth at 7:10 p.m. Room 2, the samovar. The real samovar, lid open, interior lined with a 1977 analysis report. Trace KCN detected, 0.003 grams, the last breath of 1927. Visitors inhaled. Some swore they smelled almonds. Others, only history. Room 3, the trapdoor, the oak square, hinges restored, ladder extended. A hologram of Phipps, actor in morning coat, crouched in the fiberglass aspidistra, then vanished. Children gasped. A sign. Impossible? Only to those who look up. Room 4, the sugar bowl, false bottom, twisted open. Inside, harmless salt, but the compartment still glittered. A recording of Poirot's voice. Archival, 1936. The poison was in the sweetness. So often, mes amis, is life. Room 5, the marionette. The original eyes repainted kind, strings tied in a bow. A touchscreen played Daphne's 1947 letter read by her great-granddaughter. Visitors wept. A child asked, "Did the puppet kill people?" Dr. Violet smiled. "No, petite, it taught them to dance with truth." Room 6, the 7th cup. The cup itself, roots visible through the glaze. A digital timeline, 1927, poisoned, blood-kissed. 1947, planted with violets by Poirot. 2027, DNA confirmed, Daphne's blood, Phipps' cyanide, Poirot's tears, salivary trace. A plaque, from death to life, the ultimate antidote. The annual ritual, 3:47 p.m. Every 13th May, the museum closed to the public. Descendants gathered, Captain Hercule Phipps, wreathed, 80, medals clinking. Sister Margaret's grandniece, nun from Dorset. Dr. Cornelius Shaw's great-grandson, psychiatrist. Madame Zara's granddaughter, stage medium in Las Vegas. Inspector Japp's great-great-granddaughter, Metropolitan Police Superintendent. They stood in a circle. Dr. Violet poured from the samovar into 6 cups, then the 7th, now a communal chalice. They drank in silence. At 3:47 p.m., the exact minute of the first gasp, a single camellia was placed in the 7th cup. The violets bowed. A bell rang. Ting. No one spoke of ghosts. The unpublished chapter. Poirot's final notebook in 2025. During renovations, a sealed tin was found beneath the terrace tiles. Inside, Poirot's last notebook, leather-bound entries in fading ink. The final page dated 22nd April 1960. Hastings asks why I kept the marionette. Because every killer is a puppet, strings of motive, fear, love. Phipps cut his own strings with poison. Daphne tied hers with blood. I merely held the mirror. The seventh cup. It was never about the poison. It was about the sip she took, for her child, for her father, for the store. That sip was courage. That sip was love. That sip was the real impossible crime. Surviving the unsurvivable. Plant violets, mon ami, they grow in poison and still bloom. The notebook was displayed in a crystal case. Visitors left violet ribbons at its base. The tin was reburied beneath the camellia bush, coordinates etched on the lid. The Global Echo's London, the powder room aspidistra was transplanted to the museum. It thrived. Almond scent, gone. Paris, Madame Zara's great-granddaughter performed a one-woman show, The Veil is Violet, sold out for 10 years. Hollywood, a silent film, Daphne Lovelace biopic starred a young actress with violet eyes. Oscar for Best Costume, Violet Georgette. Tokyo, a Poirot cafe served seventh cup tea. Violets floating in Darjeeling, no sugar. Dorset, the convent became a shelter for abused women, named Maison Camellia. Every resident received a knitted bowler. The Centennial Celebration, 13 May 2027, 7:00 p.m. Fireworks over the cliffs, violet and white. The samovar, now electric, hissed for the final time. Dr. Violet addressed the world via satellite. Poison was served. Truth was poured. Love was planted. 100 years later, the violets still bloom. She lifted the seventh cup. The roots had grown through the base, anchoring it to the table. She could not lift it. She smiled. Some legacies cannot be moved. The crowd, thousands, drank from paper cups. A child released a violet balloon. It rose, caught the wind, vanished over the sea. Epilogue, the eternal sip. In the museum gift shop, a single item sold out daily, a miniature seventh cup, ceramic with a violet seed embedded in the base. Instructions, plant in memory, water with truth, bloom in love. Somewhere a tourist in Tokyo planted one. Somewhere a child in Dorset watered another. Somewhere a detective in London sniffed the soil and smiled. The poison was gone. The story was not. At midnight, the museum lights dimmed. The marionette sat in its case, strings glowing faintly under UV. The seventh cup trembled just once, as if someone somewhere took a sip. The camellias nodded, the violets bowed, the samovar sighed its last, and Hercule Poirot, wherever he was, adjusted his mustaches and whispered, "Santé, mes amis, the little gray cells. They never die.